Good evening, everybody. And tonight, these candidates are standing here on why the Pakuranga voters should be given their electoral vote to them this general election. But with every election, there's one thing stepping in their way, and that's your vote. Kia ora, good evening, and welcome to tonight's It's in the Ballot show. Now, before we get on to the great part of introducing some candidates, there has been some news electorally in the last couple of hours. The death of ACT candidate Neil Christensen has passed away for the electorate of Port Waikato, and because of a result of that, the Port Waikato electorate will have its electoral vote part of the election suspended until a future date, and these are the provisions that are in the Electoral Act of what happens when a candidate dies. Yeah. Now, if you're in the Port Waikato electorate, however, please go out and give your party vote, because those parts of the ballot paper will still be counted, and on election night, the proportionality of seats will be 71 electorates, 49 list, and when the by-election for Port Waikato kicks in, we'll have a one-seat overhang for the next Parliament term, which will be 121 seats. Now, if you're wondering if this has happened before in New Zealand, we do have a situation of it happening in, it was in the 1957 election with the death of the Labour Party candidate called Bruce Waters, who died on November the 29th, and that election that particular year was November the 30th. What happened in that electorate is that this was back in the FFP days, so the Clutha seat had its own election was delayed, and that was rescheduled to the 18th of January 1958, and the MPs back then were sworn in a lot later after the election, but this was just one of those things back in the day where I think they swore them in about May, and the first bill to usually go through Parliament was the budget. So just a bit of a brief history of what's happened in there in the past. So that's our past precedent of what happens when a candidate standing for office dies after the nominations have closed. It'll probably be at least 6 weeks before we look. Was it a minimum of 6 weeks? But because we've got a general election, we'll have to wait for the writs to be returned to the Governor General, and then a by-election set of writs would have to be reissued to the Electoral Commission, as that is the technical term of what they call it. But we were asked in pre-schedule before we ended up setting for our schedule. One of the electorates we were actually asked to do was, would we be considering Port Waikato? So we may look at doing that for It's in the Ballot, and we will, when that announcement comes at a later date for those candidates, we'll sit there and go through that. But yes, for those who don't like overhang seats in Parliament, this election, we're guaranteed having 121 MPs in Parliament for the next 3 years. So now we've got two candidates here who are standing for the Pakuranga Electorate, and our incumbent, Simeon Brown, has Simeon replied, Jill, or not? No, he hasn't replied. And both, I do know the Labour candidate replied with, sorry, not enough notice, which is a bit of a shame. But I mean, many of their candidates, they can get sent stuff back in July, and, oh, sorry, we're not going to tell you until the last minute. So, it's quite interesting how it seems to, expectations don't seem to sit there and be a two-way street between some political parties, but hey, that's their choice. We've got two fantastic candidates here, and feel free to consider giving them your electoral vote. As we always say, and it's in the ballot, prioritise those who appear on the show than don't. Okay, so now we've, two candidates here. Now we've got John, and I'm be honest, I haven't looked at production sheets tonight. Who's my other candidate here tonight? You can it's
Phil Scothern.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry, this is what happens when as I'm about to get given the production sheet. Okay, so John, would you like to kick off with your opening statements on why the Pakuranga voters should give you their electoral vote this general election?
Sure, it's always a good way to start, being first, and my last name always goes first, so that's always been helpful over the course of my life. My name is John Alcock. I currently run 5 small businesses in New Zealand. I was on the board of the ACT Party at the last election, and I managed 5 elections from out here. I've also been the administrative vice president of the Young National Party down in Dunedin, which we started from scratch. And so I've had a pretty long history in politics as well. And my educational background, I have a bachelor's in science, a master's in science, and I'm a enrolled barrister sister of the High Court of New Zealand. So I've been in this for quite some time now, sort of more in the background, but it's time to stand up and be counted. And what I'm here for is freedoms and liberties for all Kiwis, irrespective of their immutable characteristics. And that's really what the government is not doing at the moment. You have National, the party of white-collar criminals, and you have Labour, the party of blue-collar criminals. And that's basically the 2 choices. So I'm here to ask everybody who's watching this to vote for somebody new.
And next up, Phil, your opening statements of why the Pakuranga voters should give you their electoral vote.
Okay, that's a pretty straightforward one. I'm a Kiwi, born and bred, enjoyed the fabulous life growing up in New Zealand, in a real New Zealand, and days of we had good freedom and plenty of job choice. But I'm standing to ensure representation of all New Zealand citizens. In recent years, the insidious creep of centralised control from the beehive and the incumbent MPs has left a large segment of the population angry and bewildered. There is powerful motivation to restore true democracy and transparency to politics in New Zealand. So that's what we believe in New Zealand Loyal as a group that we can achieve. So party vote, New Zealand Loyal, and candidate vote, Phil Scothern for Pakuranga.
Okay, and for those who are wondering where the electoral boundaries lie for Pakuranga, the electoral boundaries includes the suburbs of Pakuranga, Howick, Buckland Beach, Eastern Beach. If you cross the Panmure Bridge, the Southeastern Highway, and there's, and what's the other one? I'm just scrolling in. Tadako Drive as it crosses over the through the estuary. That is where the electoral boundaries lie. However, one thing I have noticed while looking at the map on here is the fact that Pakuranga Golf Course is not in the Pakuranga Electorate. So that might be something that you can sit there and laugh and giggle about. And actually where we're staying, holy heck, you find out some very interesting things. The electoral boundary goes to the middle of Cockle Bay, and we're just on the Pakuranga side where we're staying at our Airbnb on the Pakuranga side. But if you're on the other side where the nice bakery we found, you're in the, I think it's the Botany Electorate. Oh. Okay. Okay, thank you for that from the audience of the great interesting parts of the boundaries. I wonder, do these electoral boundaries follow school zones at all for a chance? I do know they did. Yeah, because I know they did that where I grew up on Paraparumu. They ran the electoral boundary down Kapiti Road. Oh, and next minute, guess where the school boundaries went down the same road. Okay, the questions we think you'll be asking after watching today's show, please put it on camera 3, please. Okay. Just a moment. Will the polls get this election right or get it wildly wrong, as seen in many overseas examples? Will the warehouse soon branch out into an on-site pharmacy to help combat the feel of a one-stop hypermarket shop? And will this be the last ever It's in the Ballot show in production after this election campaign? That one's on you, viewers. So back off to It's in the Ballot. Now, I do know that we were meant to have Ashmita to be our local host, but unfortunately she's had a family emergency. So Jill, welcome back again.
Good evening. Me again.
I've lost count of the number of shows you've been local host. That has been varied between all the different presenters behind the desk.
Yeah, true.
Yes. Now, would you like to explain to the candidates, for those at home, because you do a better job explaining things than me, for how It's in the Ballot works, how's the button cards and how the defer cards work?
I certainly will. So basically, the button cards work. We give them 3 cards because there's only 2 of them. So what happens is, if, for instance, John has a question that Phil is really keen to answer, he holds up his button card sometime at that point. No talking, just silently holds it up. We nod. And we know that we actually, when John finishes his answer, then we obviously say that Phil has chosen his button card to respond, and then you get your minute of button. So that's how the button cards work. And we do have defer cards, and that's really for people who don't want, or candidates, I should say, who don't want to answer a specific question, which may be the case in some of the questions that our viewers have sent us for the show.
And we recommend you defer those to candidates who have not appeared on the show.
Well, that's
a cheeky thing we do. Okay, John, would you like to kick off? What would be the first box number you'd like to open?
Let's go with number 9.
So we have question Y. Y for X-ray.
No, Y for Yankee.
Oh, sorry.
Gee, you would
You can
confuse
tell
the
it's my
control
last
tower with the
show.
phonetic alphabet.
I even looked it up there and saw X-ray there, but never mind. So, question is, John, for you. What is a quality that you admire in one of your fellow candidates?
Well, that's sort of an interesting question. My experience sort of only extends really to the national candidates, and Simeon's not here. But I've had some fairly good interactions with him in the past. I have helped run all the electorates out in East Auckland for the ACT Party last time. So we did actually get together with National ACT. I think Simeon's a fairly good guy. He's got his head mostly in the right place. He's just stuck with the wrong party.
Okay, Phil, what box number?
Number 5.
We have question F for Foxtrot. The Future of Local Government report says a significant fund is also needed to support climate change adaptation activities. How is your party going to respond to this issue?
Right. Fortunately, I had a bit of a chance to go through some of these today, so that's quite nice. Okay, climate change, pretty important issue as far as I'm concerned. Climate change is an abused term. Let's not encourage the belief that climate can be changed by paying a CO2 tax to the government. I'm trying to follow the science, but it keeps leading back to the money. The most powerful governments on earth can't keep a virus from spreading, but they say they can change the Earth's temperature if we pay more taxes. Climate change, the made-up catastrophe used by WEF to instill fear and guilt and tax, regulate and remove our freedoms, while pretending to be saving the planet. Need I say any more?
Okay. John, what box number?
20. Quite fun with random.
We have letter AB, Alpha Bravo. Successful organisations have continuous improvement programs. What improvements will your party make in the next parliamentary term?
I think Brian Tamaki said it the best the other day. In the first 100 seconds, 75% of the government needs to go. That's the improvement that we need to make. They're the ones out there wasting all our money. They're the ones out there spending billions of dollars. That is our kids and our kids' futures down the drain. They have spent so much money that they don't even know what the value of that money is even more. And they've all got to go. The whole lot of them. Our government is overburdensome. We need to get it down to a more reasonable, manageable level that governments actually should do, which is national defense, local defense, emergency services, justice system, and national infrastructure. The government should not be involved in anything else. Everything else is private goods and should be left up to the private sector. And that means you're going to have efficiency just by getting rid of all the waste that we have in government.
Phil, what box number?
Oh, try number 1.
We have letter K for kilo. How has New Zealand changed since you were a child? Has it changed for the better?
Well, pretty simple, really. It's changed dramatically and for the worse.
Okay, John, what box number?
What do you like, Jill? 10? Yeah, let's go 10.
We have question I for India. The Future of Local Government report says the current local government funding and finance system is already under pressure and is not sustainable. How is your party going to respond to this issue?
Well, I mean, that's pretty correct. I actually ran for mayor last time, mayor of Auckland. 5,263 votes, I think. We're putting 8th overall, sort of ahead of most of the other parties' candidates, which is not too bad for somebody who spent no time, money, or effort on actually campaigning. And you're right, the local government funding in New Zealand is completely broken. And it's because they steal money from people and then they give it to themselves. That's for all the hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of income for all the board members sit around all day. And all they do is employ consultants. They never actually get on with any of the work that needs to be done. And we need to have more locals making local decisions by locals for locals, instead of these huge government organizations that sit on a national level outside of the control of anybody that it actually affects, making crazy decisions that don't help our lives to be more efficient and more effective. So LGF NZ needs to go away permanently.
Phil, what box number?
Box number 25.
We have letter L for Lima. If you had been an elected MP at the time of the protests at Parliament regarding the mandates, would you have gone onto the grounds of Parliament to listen to the concerns of the people?
Absolutely. That is the very role of every MP. So I don't understand what went wrong down there. Can anybody enlighten me?
Yeah, that they're not interested in representing us, as we're both well aware. Our current set of MPs down in Parliament have absolutely no interest in representing any of us. They all helicopter into electorates that they don't live anywhere near, and they're only there to accumulate more power for themselves. We need to get rid of the whole lot of them, one at a time.
Maybe we should have had the Harold the helicopter question we think you'll be asking after watching today's show from what's been described. So, John, while you've just sat there and described what some people describe with Maggie Barry, what's your next box number?
I quite like the look of 24.
We have question V for Victor. Do you think that transgender females should be able to participate in competitive women's sports?
No. Look, I'm gay. I am in a long-term homosexual monogamous relationship. I'm part of this whole LGBTQ whatever thing, sort of very tangentially. Men have no place in women's sports. And I don't care what you say, if you are a guy and you are pretending to be a girl and you are going into women's spaces, you are a misogynist. You are putting men into women's spaces. That includes sports, that includes changing rooms, bathrooms, the lot. It needs to stop. This cannot continue. This is just insanity of not living in an actual reality. You're either a man or you're a woman. A woman is an adult human female. A man is an adult human male. That is basically the end of the discussion.
Phil, what box number?
Well, I think we'll go with number 11.
We have question P for Papa. In the 2019 budget, $1.9 billion was allocated to improving mental health services. To what extent do you consider that this has improved our mental health system and made a difference to our country's well-being?
That's a pretty simple answer, really. There's been no improvement as the funds were misdirected and inappropriately allocated. We had people that were on the ground doing amazing work and they were pretty well ignored. Again, we propose a full review of New Zealand health system and policies.
Thank you. And we have a button card from John.
Yeah, I think I'd like to add to that. And that's over the last term of Labour, and in fact National a little bit before them as well, we've seen marked decreases in people's mental health, just generally. We've seen a massive increase in suicides, particularly in young men. This is ridiculous. And the reason why it is happening is because agency, independence, individual rights, and property and sovereignty rights are being taken away from people. And that's actually what damages people's mental health, is the inability to choose their own path. So what we have to do is get the government out of people's lives and let people take back control and agency over their own lives. And a lot of those mental health issues will go away. The second part to that is that will also help build strong communities. And strong communities prevent mental health degradation as well. So that's what I'd like to see, the government getting the flick.
Great answer. Now, what box number, John?
What's that one in the far corner over there? Yeah, that
4.
one. 4.
We have question N for November. What is your party's stance on central bank digital currency? And will your party support the elimination of cash from the New Zealand economy?
Right. You guys are not going to get this anywhere else. I'm actually in charge of the financing economy for Freedoms NZ. I'm number 10 on the party list. This is my expert area. I work very closely with, I work in anti-financial crime. I work with all the New Zealand banks every single day. I work with the government regulators. I'm about to host the largest conference in the Asia Pacific region in Wellington about anti-financial crime compliance. Do you know what one of the topics is? Banning cash in New Zealand. That's what the regulators are talking about. That's what the banks are talking about. If you think you're going to continue to be able to use cash, you have another thing coming. And why would you continue to use a system that they've inflated by what? 100% in the last year? How much has your shopping bill gone up? Doubled? That's a 50% degradation in the value of your purchasing power of your dollar. You must get out of fiat currency right now, because no matter what you do, CBDCs are coming and they'll be introduced via a universal beneficial income. They'll call it something else, but that's what it'll be, and you won't have any choice.
Okay, Phil, what
And
box?
we have a button
Oh,
card.
another button.
from Phil.
Oh, better.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Phil.
Okay. Whoops, what are we? I. No? What was the letter?
What is?
V, I think.
V.
Hang on, no, it's N.
N, sorry. Yep, N caught me out there. Okay. The present proposals for CBDC are unwarranted. There's sufficient scope within our current legislation to cover the things they're talking about bringing it in, or the reason they want to bring it in. So we do not support the elimination of cash for the New Zealand economy.
Now, Phil, what box number?
Righto. 12.
We have question A for Alpha. Over the past few years, New Zealand has suffered from many forms of division. How would your party reconnect people and heal the divide so we are a united country once again?
Right, that's a good one. So we need to encourage open debate and ensure that all media is given freedom to express opinion and ideas without any form of censorship. One of the biggest things that have impacted most things that have happened in the last 3 years is the total censorship that's gone on for any opposing opinion to current government strategies. So we need the open debate and we need to have the freedom of the media.
John, what's the next box number?
It's always tempting to pick the ones at the front because I can see the numbers. This one, second row in the middle. Next one over this way. Yeah, well, that one will do. Yeah, go with that one. What's that? 18?
I like that. I like the different picking strategy.
Oh, you got to
I
be a
think
little
you'll
bit
like this
random.
one,
It
John.
introduces a bit of fun, doesn't it?
We
exactly.
have G for golf. Current information from overseas indicates that vaping is not a healthier alternative to smoking. Children of primary school age are becoming addicted. What is your party's plan to address this health concern?
Well, I mean, I vape. So that's sort of where the perspective that I come from. I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes, and it has helped me move from cigarettes to an electronic means, which is cleaner. It doesn't smell as much. It allows me to get sort of nicotine into my life. It's an addictive substance. Should it be around kids? No. Well, we already know that. That's why it's restricted to the age of 18 anyway. So it's already, that is already in place. And I get a lot of sort of comments about people wanting to get rid of all the fruity flavors because it makes it less appealing to kids. Those are flavors that I use. I'm an adult. I should be able to make my own choices. But there probably should be a lot of penalties for people that are selling these things to kids. Like, that's already illegal. There are already penalties in place. What the police are not doing, because they're busy oppressing the rest of us freedom people, is actually enforcing the laws that are on the book. So, you know, it's already there. We don't actually need to do anything different aside from make sure that they're not getting to the hands of kids, just like we make sure they don't do it with alcohol.
Should the regulation of it be in the same way for the sale of liquor? Because at the moment, both tobacco and vapes are pretty much, you don't really need a license as such to sell them in the same way as if you have a liquor license, you have to put 2 notices in the local paper. People have the right to object. I remember when they extended it from 21 to 42 days to do the whole application process. Should the regulation of vapes and tobacco products be in line with the sale of liquor?
That's an interesting way to put it. And I think the answer is probably yes. As much as I'm against sort of government interference in things, and I would prefer that this was a cultural change of you actually taking care of your kids and making sure they're not doing these kind of things and building strong families and communities that look down on these kind of things in the first place. You go to Destiny Church and you go and have a hunger with them. There's no alcohol there. Why can't we have more of these changes coming from our communities instead of the state having to do everything in the background to try and enforce us to live a way that somebody in Wellington decided that we should live? And once you're a reasonable adult, then none of these should apply to you because you should be free to make your own choices and accept the consequences of those choices. So should they have the same as alcohol? I probably put all drugs in the same category, really. So yeah, maybe that'll be something interesting to look at.
Phil, what box number?
17.
Question AA, Alpha Alpha. Will your party support a full inquiry into the deaths and vaccination injuries that have resulted from the Pfizer vaccine program?
Absolutely. A full and independent inquiry and covering every aspect that led up to it, as well as what happened and transpired through the mandates and the protests, etc., etc. It's vitally important that we get some integrity into this sort of thing, because that's going to expose exactly what's going on globally, not just in New Zealand, and it's warranted unequivocally. Thank you.
Okay, John, your next box.
26 is looking at me, so I'll take that one.
Question O for Oscar. What will your party do to protect the river and water systems from the slash harvested from forests harvested forests around New Zealand?
So that is a very good question, because we in New Zealand often do care very deeply about our beautiful country and all the things that's going on here. And this is the slash in this case is what's known in economics as a negative externality of production. So this is a result of the forestry that is going on, and this is part of the production process of the forestry industry they have. They need to internalize that negative externality. So that means if they're creating the damage as a result, then they need to be able to pay for the cleanup of that damage. But I understand that the actual problem here is government regulations that prevent them from doing their normal cleanup. And so the problem, as pretty much everything comes down to, is the government is the problem. And until we get rid of all this government over-regulation and allow people to take care of their business and the consequences of that business in a more personally responsible way, we are never going to get the change we want. All we'll get is a band-aid piece of legislation that doesn't solve the problem.
And we have a button card from Phil.
Yeah, that's a very good answer, and I endorse all of that. But whoops, now I can't find my place again.
Question
Oh, sorry, yeah, O. So we need to enforce the existing regulations, because everything's in place already to police this stuff, and where appropriate, monitor the activities of the industry responsible. And as John says, we just need to get rid of the incumbent politicians who are not doing their job. Thank you.
And Phil, what box number?
What box number? 27.
27.
And we have question J for Juliet. Is government spending on cycling and cycleways a waste of money?
Where do we start with a waste of money? There needs to be better transparency, I believe, on who is actually making the decisions on these things, and much better public participation. These cycleways and such things come out of the blue, and when you look at the WF agendas, you sort of wonder how it's being manipulated to encourage 15-minute cities and such things. So, yeah, they're good in its place, but certainly needs a lot more thought about the implications and results of introducing these things.
Just before we move on, would you like to give us an example of a good cycleway that you believe politicians and councillors should model themselves on?
Oh, that's a good one. I've got a bike, but I don't use cycleways like that. So no, I can't give you an example. But yeah, there's been a lot of controversy over it in the media in the last couple of years. So I think that's a pretty good indication of what people are feeling.
John, what box number?
15.
And just before we get to the question, do you know of a good example of a cycleway?
I think my primary problem with cycleways is that the cyclists don't pay for them. So if you want to have cycleways, that's totally fine. I understand it, but then all bikes need to be registered and pay a registration charge. They need to pay AECC, and then you have a license plate. And then you can have as many bikeways as you like. But please don't put them on roads. Go and build them somewhere else. I think probably Pawanui is a small town, has a very good example of how you can build integrated pathways through a town. Like, we should look more to that, or what they've done next to the Oraki train station. They've got a beautiful walkway and pathway through there now where bikes and people can walk at the same time, but it's separate from the cars, because that's where the danger is between vehicles traveling. You've got a 2-ton car next to a cyclist, accident's going to happen. So please keep these separate. And also, cyclists, you need to actually pay for what you're using.
So a question for you, John. Was it John?
Yes.
No, I got. We have X for X-ray.
Finally.
Finally. Tell us one personal quality that you can offer our country as an MP.
I am the most efficient person that you'll meet. But my thing is efficiency. Like, we need to be efficient, but efficient doesn't mean just doing the specific task. It means considering the time factors involved, the quality involved, the people involved, the costs involved. These things need to be considered both from their overall perspective, but also as individual sort of levels. You need to break it down and then build it back up so you get a more efficient result. And I'll tell you, the number one thing we can do to increase efficiency in this country for literally everybody is get rid of the government. They are the biggest drag on any economy anywhere in the world. They are probably 50% drag on the New Zealand economy. They produce almost nothing. They don't provide services that we want. In fact, here's a good example. I was talking to one of my friends down in Taupo just yesterday, because I've just come back from there. And I said, can you give me one example of a service that the government actually provides you? Nothing. His doctor isn't in Taupo. He has to travel to Auckland. He pays his road user charges and his fuel tax. The government's not providing any services.
Okay, Phil.
Oh, it's number 2.
We have letter D, D for Delta. How are you going to address the cost of living crisis?
I love that one. Has anyone heard of 1% transaction tax? It's just unimaginable, the freedom that's going to give people, and we'll still have just the same amount of money coming into the government coffers to run the country, and it'll be across the board for everybody on a fair and equal level. Enough said.
Now, will it... Oh,
We have a
You put it in
button
button.
from John.
I'm just going to quickly button on that as well, because I completely agree. I think we do need to move to a transaction tax system, because if you're a wage and salary earner and you vote for Labour, you are voting to have most of your income taken away. When I was a wage and salary earner, I was about 67%. And I told David Seymour this, so he introduced 17% GST and 17% income tax, which he's now gone back on and has a progressive tax system in breach of his constitution. Whatever. That's not really important. But if you are with the National Party, you are the white-collar criminals. You have argued, I've read the tax legislation. Tax is my specialty in law. That's what I enjoy doing. It's very interesting. All of it is exceptions. All of it is exceptions to let National Party voters who own businesses, like myself, get away with paying not our fair share of the tax. I reduced my income tax from about 67% to 25%. And then I can claim back the GST, which wage and salary earners can't do. So if you're Labour or if you're National, you need to come and vote for a Freedoms Party that is interested in a 1% transaction tax, because that is the only way to get everyone all the time and still provide the services that you need.
now, before we move on to the next one, I want from both of you, we technically, indirectly, pay a transaction tax every time we go pay wave.
Well, that's 3.5%, so 1% is nothing.
Yeah, but depending between 0.7 and I'm trying to think for my business, it's between 0.7 to 0.7 for contactless debit, 1.85 for credit card, domestic, and 2.85, I think it is, but I might have the figure wrong, for international. So anytime, and I, as the person receiving the money, is the one who's paying, we could say, the transaction fee. And the other thing that also sits there and disgusts me is the fact that there's no GST on it.
Yep, and I think once you address this and get it down to at least 1%, you can probably go further than that. Like
Yeah.
1% is just the starting point, but it affects so many billions of transactions every single day that you won't even notice it. And now there's no reason to try and avoid it because it's so small, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Was it John? You've got the next box number.
Oh, I seem to be talking quite a lot.
That's right.
It is mine, isn't it?
Yeah, because John
Okay.
put in the button.
Just checking. I don't want to jump in place if I can't. I will take the one behind 16. Yeah, that
19.
one. 19.
And Stacey confirmed that as well, counting backwards and forwards.
So we have question R for Romeo. Does your party believe that there should be a policy on the location of alternative energy sources, such as solar farms near urban areas?
I don't think Freedom has a specific policy regarding that rather specific question. However, what I will say is that we need to use the appropriate energy source for the appropriate application. In some cases, that may be solar, it may be geothermal, it may be hydro, it may be nuclear power, it may be gas, it may be fossil fuels, coal. There is appropriate applications for all these types of fuels that we're aware of now, and all of the ones that we're going to discover in the future. So that shouldn't be restricted in any way to just specific areas. I understand that people don't necessarily want to live to wind farms. Okay, then don't pick houses near wind farms or solar farms. Those kind of things are going to happen. But we need to use the appropriate fuel to power our future in an appropriate way, and most importantly, get energy costs down as low as we possibly can. Because it is the concentrated energy that fuels wealth and human productivity, and therefore fuels the economy and makes everyone richer. And the richer we make people, the better all of our lives will be.
We have a button card for Phil.
Right, so I endorse all of that, John. So I guess it's a no in terms of the question, and that's because there's ample existing efficient energy solutions, and John's already alluded to those, that do not have any dramatic effect on climate, because that's one of the reasons they're proposing all these alternative energy sources, which are all very good in certain circumstances, but pretty limited in what they actually do achieve. And I think that one of the best books I've read, and I refer to Fossil Future by Alex Epstein, and that's a book that is very well worth reading. It explains this whole concept in great detail and very validly. So that's my 2 bits.
Okay. Oh, you want to put in a button or? Yes.
Yep. Oh, Friday the 13th.
This Friday.
It is.
We have question M for Mike. New South Wales has an independent commissioner to investigate corruption. Do you think New Zealand should investigate creating a similar position?
I do. It's extremely important. And of course, the thing that's most important, of course, that it has to be independent. So, yeah, any corruption needs to be independently investigated. If you try and get, I mean, the police are a prime example, especially during the mandates and things. People made complaints about their activities, and the Police Complaints Authority investigated and found no flaw. I wonder who those people represent. How can you get the same institution that causes the problem to investigate themselves? And it's the same within government in this proposal to do an investigation into the COVID vaccine injuries. And they put forward a policy of investigation that didn't include the key performance factors, which was the vaccines and the origin of what the supposed COVID was. Thank you.
Okay, John, what box number?
14, please.
Question E for Echo. Will your party review the relationships and sexuality education, known as RSE, in primary schools?
Yes. That is definitely a position that Freedom Z is taking, because it's unacceptable to be teaching what is essentially sexual perversion to kids. And in my opinion, it shouldn't be there at all. I don't think it is useful or helpful. I think it is up to the parents to make that determination for themselves and for their children, and to pass on their cultural norms and values to their kids. And it is not up to the government to come in and tell parents or their kids what they can and cannot do, and what they're taught about in these sexual education classes, which, as far as I'm concerned, is literally grooming kids. And I think that's all that actually needs to be said about that.
Phil, what box number?
Righto, number 7.
We have question H for hotel. Property investors often outbid first home buyers at house auctions. How would you encourage these investors to switch to more productive investments?
Okay, there have been no improvement in the funds and, oh, hang on, what's this?
Question H for hotel.
My apologies. Okay, this comes back to our 1% transaction tax again, is our answer. That'll provide a fairer general financial position for citizens, and therefore a level playing field. And really that's what we need, because the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and it's becoming more and more unbalanced as we watch and observe. So again, our solution to most of this stuff is the 1% transaction tax. The homework's been done on it. It's plausible and advisable, and it's happening in Dubai. It's very successfully, so no problems.
Okay, John, what box number?
We'll take number 3, please.
We have question B for Bravo. Do you think New Zealand has coped well with the COVID-19 pandemic? What lessons have we learnt?
I don't think the government has learned any lessons. And I think that is exactly the problem. No, I don't think that we've dealt with it particularly well. I got stuck in quarantine after Jacinda opened the borders to Australia. I went over for a 2-day conference and got stuck for 5 weeks. So thanks, New Zealand taxpayer, for funding all of my quarantine stay, and thanks to the other company that I work for funding my hotel stay for 5 weeks while I was locked inside. Did it do anything? No. Was that 6 negative COVID tests later? Yes. So I had 6 COVID tests before I arrived in quarantine, all negative. But you stuck me on a red flight with other people who had actual positive tests back to New Zealand, and then I had to stay in quarantine for another 2 weeks because of your complete incompetence and mismanagement of the situation. And then you kept us locked down. For the only reason I can assume you kept us locked down is to completely eliminate small business in New Zealand and force everybody into working for giant corporations. You eliminated 27,000 small businesses. It is disgusting, and you people need to be held accountable. Labour and just right there.
Phil, what box number?
Oh, we're getting down. We're getting down, aren't we? I'll try 28.
Question Z for Zulu. What MP in the current Parliament, and not a party leader, do you admire and why?
None. Do you need a why?
Yeah, if you'd like to, up to you.
Okay, I didn't script that one, so this will be off the cuff. Because none of them have done anything for 3 years that I've seen. So, hey, give me a good reason.
I mean, they have. They've destroyed small business in New Zealand.
That isn't a good reason.
They have increased child sexual abuse and human trafficking by 104%. This is from New Zealand Customs. I held an event with them a couple of weeks ago. That is a 104% increase over 21 to 22 in human trafficking and child sexual abuse in New Zealand. That is 4,000 additional people. That is 8,000 people per year that get either trafficked for sexual purposes or are kids being trafficked for sexual purposes in this country. And this is not acceptable. And this is the legacy of Labour and the Greens. This is what happens when you destroy the New Zealand economy, when you destroy the New Zealand community, when you try to get us all fighting each other all the time. What happens? Kids get sexually abused. This can no longer be tolerated, and this needs to end.
And John, what's your next box number?
21.
We have question W for whiskey. If you do not become a politician, what is your dream job?
I'm already doing my dream job. I have my own business and I consult to solve problems. So that is what I do at the moment, and I do it for a few different businesses in New Zealand, plus this giant American global corporation that wants to build their business in New Zealand. I'm self-employed. I get to pick my own hours, I get to pick my own vacations, I get to work from wherever I'd like to work, and my primary objective is to help other Kiwis do exactly the same thing, because I think that is very much in the Kiwi spirit. And for some reason, we've got a bunch of people sitting around in cities going to jobs and offices that they don't care about on public transport that doesn't work, and then they get depressed, and then they want to kill themselves. Why? They have no agency. So let's take our agency back. And if you would like help, just give me a call. Yeah, but they said they couldn't do that. That was part of the question.
Phil.
Righto. Number 22.
We have question S. S for Sierra. How effective do you consider the government's action on youth offending has been?
Okay, totally inadequate. Aren't we a negative lot? Why are we downing our government all the time? The review of the education and health systems will have a huge positive impact while investigating other specific solutions. In the past, there have been very good solutions, and there are existing solutions which are outside government agencies that work very, very successfully. It's really just a case of giving these youth some self-esteem, and the best way to do that is through the correct education and through good health.
John, what box number?
We're getting down to the last 4 here. 16, please.
We have question T for Tango. Would you or your party consider giving a fixed percentage of GST tax revenue to help fund local councils on infrastructure projects?
This is an ACT policy. So I understand why David is pushing for this, because he wants more investment from the local sort of area, in the local area. And I think that's a reasonable sort of way to approach it. But look, we have to get rid of GST. We have to get rid of income tax. We have to get rid of company tax. We have to get rid of trust tax. Why? Because all of those things are used to not pay tax. You think they are a tax, but they're only a tax if you are not financially literate, and if you're poor. And that's where these taxes come from. They come for our most disadvantaged. So, do you want to get GST on that? Not really. I think we need to go with at least a 1% transaction tax, and then a portion of that in the local area can be assigned to those councils so that they can do what they need to do. But we need to stop the differential tax equations all over the place, because it's just there for money laundering.
Phil, what box number?
Number 6.
We have question Q for Quebec. What is your party's policy to get families out of emergency accommodation and into long-term stable housing?
Why does it always come back to a 1% transaction tax? Okay, along with a review of the health system, and these issues will provide the solution, essentially. The whole point of emergency accommodation is for people who are disadvantaged or stressed or forced through mandates to lose their jobs and their homes, etc., most recently. So yeah, 1% transaction tax, fair across the board, and a level playing field for everybody.
And John, what box number?
8, please.
We have question U for uniform. Even though our state highways are managed by the New Zealand Transport Agency, should councils and residents have the final say on the speed limits that they have imposed in their communities?
That's an interesting question. I'm very in favour of, I do a lot of driving, and I have quite a nice car that I go and drive. 1993 Mitsubishi GTO, which is being restored at the moment. So I quite like that, and we like going for cruises with the boys. So I think that's an interesting sort of question, is who should set the speed limits in the areas? And I think for at least national roads, that needs to be set by a national organisation. And while I'm happy to sort of have input from local residents and things, if you're going to make roads unusable, then I'm not really interested in your opinion, because you're not in favour of roads. So if you're hugely in favour of cyclists, you're going to say the speed limit on the roads around my house should be 10. But you don't have a reasonable argument as to why. And if your argument is for it reduces deaths, well, then I would say make the speed 0, because that makes all deaths go away. But that is also a ridiculous argument to be made. So what we need to do is have a balance between being able to transport people quickly and safely between locations, and the safety aspects related to that.
Okay.
So, Phil, you don't have to pick a box number because this is the last question.
I was going to go any, money, mo.
Okay, well, we have question C for Charlie. Do you believe that 16-year-olds have the maturity and comprehension to vote?
No.
And we have a button from
Well, I
John,
have to.
or is that
it's
number
the last
4?
question, isn't it? So I've got to say something at the end of this. I think we're asking the wrong question. And I think this is really the wrong question to ask, because it is not age that determines whether or not you're a reasonable, rational adult who's able to make these sort of decisions and to vote. So why is it 18? Well, traditionally it was 18 because that's when we'd send you to die. Do we still do that? Kind of, sort of, not really. But I've heard some other proposals that are sort of more along the lines of you should be able to vote when you are a contributing member of society. And I quite like that sort of philosophy, which a 1% transaction tax would do, because everybody would pay it. So it gets around a lot of those sort of things. But at the very least, if we leave it at 18, and I see no reason to move it, so leave it there for the moment, any new immigrants to New Zealand must also have been here paying tax for 18 years before they can vote. Why? Because that's the rule for Kiwis. Why is this rule not the same for everybody? So I don't know. We should have a discussion around what makes you have the qualities of maturity and comprehension to vote. Because you can be 30 and be completely disengaged. Maybe you're still a fairly good tradesperson, you're an electrician or a plumber or a builder. You just don't care about politics. So why are you voting? Most of them don't. And so the real decisions only comes down to, what, 10% of the population who actually make decisions in elections? And on top of that, instead of asking this question, maybe we should be asking, why are elections as important as they are? And how do we make them as unimportant as possible?
Very interesting answers from tonight, and I think the show is going to be a very good highlight for our viewers to watch. We're going to take a quick break now, and we'll be back in 10 minutes' time for hard-hitting questions.
Okay, that's good.
And welcome back to It's in the Ballot. Now it's time for hard-hitting questions. Okay, and welcome back to It's in the Ballot. Okay, I'm finally see myself back where it is. So hard-hitting questions are the questions that we sit there and ask every candidate who is on here. As you can see there is 2 candidates here and a bunch of ghosts. If that's the best way to describe it. So for those candidates not there, if you would like to answer the hard-hitting questions, feel free to record a video, hashtag It's in the Ballot, and post on whichever social media platform you're on. And we'll figure it out and we'll post it if you answer it. So let's get to I actually put the wrong graphic. I had put the graphic up there. So let's get to hard-hitting question number 1. What is the most pressing issue in the Pakuranga Electorate? Let's kick off with Phil.
Right, pretty straightforward one really, because it's the cost of living. I think everybody's being impacted by that right at the moment. Again, we come back and reiterate our 1% transaction tax for all the right reasons. The majority of residents will have 40% more spending power in their pocket. And really that's the key to fixing the cost of living, because you've got more discrepancy to do. You buy what you want and then decide how they're going to spend the money you've got and not be limited by a frugal lifestyle.
Okay, John.
And I think that's exactly right. It's about giving freedom of choice back to the individual. And that's what the one transaction tax really means. It means the government is not stealing so many of your resources out of your pay packet every single week. If you're on minimum wage, you're making, give or take, about $1,000 a week. And the government takes $400 of that and spends it on what? What do you get out of that $400 that you're giving to the government every single week? And your $600 pay packet afterwards. We need to be able to spend the money that we earn and our resources and our individual property rights in ways that we determine are good. So go and support the businesses that you like. If you're really into the environment and you want clean, green things, make sure that you spend your money on businesses that support that philosophy. If you're somebody that prefers high-speed road transport, make sure you're supporting companies that do those kind of things. I think that's the other thing for Pakuranga as well, is we have to get this traffic under control. It took me half an hour to get here, and I only live in Mount Wellington. That's crazy. We need to sort this out, and all the transport needs a real good kick up the arse.
Amazing how peak goes different, considering it took me 40 minutes to get from New Lynn to Howick at 2:30, between 2 and 2:30 this afternoon. So it's amazing how extreme that went in that short space of time. Was your delays mainly caused by turn arrows at traffic lights?
Traffic lights are the worst possible thing you can do for traffic. We need to invest in passive traffic management systems that do not require traffic lights, that allow traffic to flow. And also, probably half the drivers in Auckland need to lose their license because no one indicates, no one does the speed limit, no one can actually drive. It's really terrible that we allow people with no ability to control a motor vehicle to be in control of a motor vehicle. So that is part of the problem as well. But traffic lights have got to go. We've got better solutions than that.
Okay, so hard-hitting question number 2. Changes to central government legislation impacts local communities. Councils are expected to deliver the outcomes of legislation without funding or resources. An example, government ministries and department increasingly communicates with citizens via emails and texts. The non-computer literate visit libraries for assistance in tax and benefit matters. This assistance is funded by ratepayers. Do you believe the central government should form partnerships with council to deliver central government services? If so, how should these partnerships be funded? Let's kick off with John.
The central government needs to keep out of local matters. That is not what they're for. The national government is to look after national things, who we declare war with, who we're dealing with in foreign affairs and trade agreements and international things like that. And what we have a severe lack of is local decisions by locals for locals. So that means councils need to look after their own local area. They should have some tax appropriated from that area to be able to support those services in the area. But the national government really shouldn't have anything to do with local issues. And that really is the crux of the issue right there, is national governments trying to centralize power and control into Wellington And what would they know about what we face here in Pakuranga? Absolutely nothing. What would they know about what people face down in Invercargill and what services they need? Absolutely nothing. Have they been there? Maybe they flew in a plane through at some stage to hold a rally for some reason, but they don't live there. They don't know anything about the area. They can't help the people there because they're not interested in that. They're only interested in centralising and controlling their power into Wellington, and that has to stop.
Okay, Phil.
Yep, well, I have to concur with all of that. So my answer is no. They shouldn't enter into any partnerships to be funded either by the government. So central government should be not form partnerships with the councils to deliver central government services. Makes a mockery of the whole objective of local control, basically. This topic highlights the need for a full review of local body services and local body government and the structure and relationship with that, with the central government.
Thank you for those answers. Now let's get to my favourite part of the show. If elected, what would be your first member's bill that you'll put in the biscuit tin? Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to go first. First to last. It's all.
You got 2 minutes.
Best dressed. So, well, I thought about that and I thought, well, there's heaps of things I'd like to do. The introduction of a bill to prohibit climate control strategies such as chemtrails, because you see what's going on up in those skies and what they call climate change, but there's a lot of influence on that from external sources. So you ask anybody in New Zealand how these chemtrails are produced in the sky, and there's heaps of conjecture about it. If you do a bit of research, there's a lot of information out there that this stuff has been happening, called geoengineering. So I think we need to have some local control of that within New Zealand, within the aviation industry or whatever, but the government is responsible for our airwaves, our airspace. So what are these planes doing? What's in the content of those trails? From what research I've done, most planes these days that have jet engines, and that's the majority of our big aircraft that fly through the skies, they don't have what they called contrails originally, which is condensation coming out of the aircraft. The engines are so finely tuned that they don't emit any vapor trails. So whatever's coming out of those planes is for some other ulterior motive. So I think we need a full investigation into that and a bit more control from New Zealand aviation industry about who's doing it and why.
So for air show displays, will they still be allowed to sit there and put some diesel into the exhaust pipe that has little smoky patterns that go around?
Oh, but that's fun. We need that.
John?
I think this election really comes down to sort of one primary issue, and that is control over our finances. And at the moment, we have a currency that is infinite. The government prints money infinitely to the tune of billions of dollars, which reduces your ability to earn your incomes and what you can spend on that afterwards. So what we need to do absolutely first is move to a sound currency. And by sound currency, I mean one that is portable, homogeneous, divisible, durable, and scarce. The scarcity is what is missing from all global fiat currencies. They used to be gold back, which provided that scarcity. Fiat currencies do not. Fiat currency's only purpose is to steal the wealth of nations and transfer it to the donors of those large parties. And we see this happening on a global scale. And they can do this because they can print their currency infinitely. I think the US is printing something like $56 billion a day. They are nearly owing $34 trillion in debt. It's 120% of their GDP. We're at 94% of our GDP in debt. If that was any private organization, no bank on the planet would ever accept that risk profile. But we allow our politicians to do it. We allow them to steal from our generation, and from our kids' generation, and from our grandkids' generations, and load us up with all this debt to make us debt slaves forever. So the absolute first thing we have to do is get off fiat currency and back onto a sound currency that is scarce and that can't just be counterfeited by the government.
Thank you for that. So let's get in for closing statements. Get 1 minute each on why the Pakuranga voters should give you their electoral vote. Who would like to go first?
I suppose I'll go first. That will kick things off. You should give me your vote in Pakuranga for all of the reasons that you've listened to tonight. I know what I'm talking about. I've been involved in this political machine for quite some time from a lot of different parties' perspectives. I'm involved in anti-financial crime now and trying to reduce the harm that the financial crime caused by the government currently is inflicting on our populace. That is why you should vote for me in this electorate, and that is why you should vote for Freedoms New Zealand as your party vote. Because we are the only party, well, along with the other freedom parties actually, that is taking an approach that will actually resolve the core issues that the government is causing. And make no mistake, it is the government that is the problem. And asking the problem to solve itself won't help. So if you keep voting for either the Labour candidates or the National candidates, you're going to keep getting the same results. So now is the time for change.
And Phil.
All right. Okay. I think it comes back to integrity. And if we look at our current politicians and Parliament, it's been missing for quite some time and for far too long. New Zealand loyal candidates' first obligation is to the voters, not to overseas interests. So one of the first things on our list is to remove ourselves, New Zealand that is, from the WEF, the UN and the World Health Organization, which are unelected bodies. They're corporate structures designed towards a one world government, and we do not need that. We want to retain our sovereignty. So party vote for New Zealand loyal and put me in there to become a MP. And I won't be a politician, I'll be a representative of the people.
And thank you for the audience for coming tonight, as well as the candidates for taking their time to make this It's in the Ballot show a success. It's been, I'd say, one of our most interesting shows. I would be honest, I walked in not expecting many of the things that happen, but sometimes you need that to happen in a show to add flavour and interest. And I believe that has been very well achieved tonight. Can I also thank Grant and Ian in studio for doing cameras and the editing desk, and thank Stacey for doing the remote editing, and also thank Jill for filling in again as the question host. Now, we do have coming up on Wednesday night, we do have now this is for the multi-electorates that didn't happen, we do have a combined multi-electorate It's in the Ballot remote show that will be getting filmed, and I'll be broadcasting that from Wellington because I'll be back there in 2 days' time. Hopefully tomorrow I drive like the clappers down the North Island. As anyone knows me knows I don't tend to fly. On Thursday, we are planning to do the same at 7 o'clock for a general candidates show for those who were won candidates with shows that were cancelled earlier on there. There were a couple of electorates that happened with. And ready for Saturday night, we're bringing you an election night show. So turn off your TV on Channel 1 and Channel 3. Or, hey, you can have them running in the background on mute. We don't care. As long as you have our one with the volume going. And we can sit there and have the highlights, the lowlights, bring you in the results as the night goes on, and you can sit there and have a bit of fun with the approach and have a different way of doing things. And we're going to show you some of the highlights that happen throughout the show. Alex has taken a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff in there, videos, photos, so we can have that in our first non-political hour, being the first hour from 6 till 7, and then once 7 o'clock hits around, we can sit down there and get to the glory results, have candidates who have been participated in the show. We'll we may have some in studio as well. I mean, hopefully some from the Rongotai or Wellington Central Electorate will be quite good. I think Michael Appleby would be a nice one to sit down there and have at the election night party if he hasn't got one for the legalised cannabis party. And we can sit there and beam into different parts of the country, and hopefully some of the candidates where we do beam in sit there and join us for the night, and then we can sit down there and have an interesting look at how the election night results do come in. I do believe one thing, within the first 15 minutes we will see all the early vote information submitted in to be counted, considering those polls have already set and started. And from what I've heard, and I do believe this, they do start counting them early on Saturday morning. However, just for those who are wondering about security measures they take, apparently you're not allowed your cell phone in there. You're only allowed pen and paper that's supplied in there that you must leave in there between going in and out of the counting. So hopefully if you have any leaked results, I hope like hell they have good memory. But that's all right. I mean, it's only a couple of hours later. We'll know anyway. And remember, you can sit there and vote now. So if you cannot make it to a polling booth on Saturday but could make it earlier, do that. Make sure your voice is counted. So you can see many of our reruns of episodes, which will be featuring across various times between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. over the next couple of days, ready for the election. Hopefully that helps you with deciding. And we will see you all back on Wednesday at 7 p.m. for our Māori Electorates remote show. See you then.
Iowa.